shake your dreams from your hair. I'm already there, right beside you. So please, don't hide your safe. I'll be there if it breaks, right beside you. Suddenly I know now how it feels. I no longer have to beg or steal. I can stand now on this higher ground, where love is just a sound, where love is...
Good morning, everyone. Crystal here from Gecko Diva, and welcome to the Coffee and Cresties podcast. It's a morning podcast. It's probably going to be a pretty relaxed show today because I know it's Turkey Day. It's Thanksgiving weekend for Canadian folks. I know U.S. people is in November, but Canadians it's this weekend. So we get a long weekend. We get for a lot of people, I guess Monday's a holiday, right? So a lot of people are doing their turkeys today. Gerald, I know, is already up and getting prepped. And this morning, he's realized that we don't have a whole bunch of people coming over today for Thanksgiving dinner, but he's stressed that one turkey is not enough. So he's just left to go get a second turkey, which I think is kind of funny that he's getting a second turkey on the Sunday. So hopefully he'll be able to find something. But we usually have a pretty large turkey, to be honest. There has been one time with our old stove that we would put the turkey in it and it took up the entire stove. Like, it was pretty wild that the whole rack was doing one of these where it was kind of looped kind of downwards, a bit of a curve because the turkey was so heavy. We've since kind of reined it back a little bit on the turkey sizes, and those are ones because they were our own turkeys. So we were growing our own turkeys for several years once we first started the farm here, and we'd have our own homegrown turkeys and then process our own turkeys, and they were always way larger than what you would get at the store. And at the end of the day, I mean, with the turkey prices going up lately, I think that maybe it's something that we would look at doing again, because a turkey that size would be astronomical to buy at this point. I don't even know if you can get one. Yeah, so he says Gerald's up in the chat this morning. He says largest one was 38 pounds. And that wasn't dressed. Remind me. I think that was what it was before we put the stuffing in and all that, but I could be wrong. I'm sure he will let me know. And he says, I will next year. It was crazy. Oh, so yeah. So he probably went and bought a second turkey. He's probably on his way home now with that. Prices have gotten insane. So let's see who we have in the chat this morning. I know a lot of people are really busy, either at family gatherings. So I think this is going to be one of those watch later episodes, which is fine. Husband's in first because, of course, he knew I was hopping on. So he wanted to get his comment on before he was driving. So he popped that in right away. And he's wishing everyone a happy Turkey Day to Canadians celebrating today. We got Natty in the house. Good morning, Natty. Hope you're doing well. Hope your weekend is all planned for Thanksgiving too. Cassandra's in the house. Good morning. Happy Thanksgiving weekend. Same to you, Cassandra. We got Tammy in the house. Good morning, Tammy. Happy Thanksgiving weekend. And I think for now, that's who we have in the comments anyways. We have more people watching, but that's who we have in the comments. So good morning, everyone. We decided last minute that we're going to do the Canadian Reptile Expo in Mississauga on the 20th of October. So that would be next Sunday. We're not going to have two booths this time like we did at CRBE. We're going to do a combined booth. So it's going to be kind of like, the bright side with Gecko Diva and all the colorful pink neon and so on, and then more of the dark side with the greens and the blacks on VIP Morphs, and we're meshing it together. So we're doing a split table. It's a lot easier for us because it's just the two of us. And when we're driving down to Toronto, our son stays and is able to farm sit because we have a lot going on at the house. So it makes it a little bit easier for us to be able to manage one table instead of having a lot of a larger section and just be the two of us trying to like work it all together. But if you are coming down for the expo, we will be there. Would love to see everybody who's able to attend. I will be having Rapashi. So I do have Rapashi that I'm going to bring that'll be available for sale at the expo. If anyone wants any, I did put a post up yesterday. If you're looking for any special orders, so any of the breeder friends that are listening to this that are planning on coming to see to the expo, if you would like to get your hands on like one of the larger containers, so like the 70.4 ounces, let me know because I can get the special order in, but I need to know by the end of today. And if there's any special flavors that you're having a hard time finding at your local stores and such, reach out and I can put an order in for it too. I will be putting my order in at the end of today. So that way it'll be there for next week. Oh, Gerald says it was 41 total weight with the stuffing. So it was a big bird. It was heavy. That's for sure. And yes, Tammy, happy Turkey Day to everybody. Gerald says last expo for the year, so reach out if you want anything. Yeah, that's the other thing. It's going to be the last expo for that. I think it's the last expo that we're going to go to. They usually release the next date after. I know there's a pet expo in November, but that's more geared towards like dogs and cats. There's a small reptile section. I'm not sure if they're doing one in December, but we'll find out after next Sunday because they'll release the next date after the expo is gone and passed. Good morning, Shauna. Hope you're doing well. And Shauna's from Florida, so thoughts and prayers for Shauna that when she gets home that everything's okay, because I know she was traveling this week and she wasn't home, but hopefully everything's fine and dandy when you get home and you don't have too much of a mess to deal with. Cassandra, so shout out, our local Leo breeder is having a table there. Oh, okay. Wishing him a good show. Awesome. If you have the name of the breeder, just put it in the chat and definitely we'll put it up on the screen and promote. Our last one, it's Christmas. Yeah, okay. And happy Thanksgiving. Thanks, Shauna. I'll wish you that in November since you're in the States. I do have something that I want to push out for in the tea, so let's go and jump right into that. My hair is very poofy today. I got a new curling iron and we're trying something new, so we'll see how it goes. All right, so the tea this morning. You have all heard destruction that's been happening from this hurricane, past hurricanes. There's been a lot of people that have been dealing with a lot of damages and stuff, and so there is usually in the evening tonight on Fat Man Nation, you'll have my husband has his podcast with his friends, is the Lamest Chat. And then after that, Chris Eaton has his show that is on at night. So it's usually 7 is the pregame show, I guess, the first one. And then after that, Chris has his at 9. They've postponed everything for tonight, and that's because Small Talent Exotics and Holdback Rack are doing a charity auction on the Holdback Rack podcast on YouTube, and it's for Jeremy and Jeannie Bod. So I will put up the little video here that promotes it. It does start at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I know for the US people that are listening, Redline Shipping is sponsoring. They're doing free shipping. There clearly there'd be additional cost if anyone in Canada is looking to bid and purchase anything. I'm not sure how that would work out. You'd have to reach out to them to see, because you're looking at there'd be export fees in that case. I don't know much details about that. But definitely check it out. And if you are able to support, I'm sure there's going to be not just animal items, there'll be other items that might be a little bit easier for you to get your hands on and not have to do any export. Charlie at Shed Testing, I know too, is doing some shed testing for people who are into things like ball pythons. And the reason I'm pushing it here is because Jeannie does do Crested Geckos. So they are a husband and wife team. Do very much like ball pythons. I think they work with hog noses. Correct. Gerald might correct me if I'm wrong. But I do know that Jeannie does work with Crested Geckos because we have talked about different projects and exanthics and hypo projects and such. So I figured it'd be good to kind of promote it here. So I'm gonna put up the video real quick so you guys can see some of the details. If you want to see the details again, information is posted on Small Town Exotics Instagram page and also on the Hold Back Rack podcast Instagram page. Warning, it is heavier music this morning for 9 a.m. So if your volume is really loud and you don't really want to hear that rock music, you might want to turn it down for a quick second. I'm giving you a little disclaimer. I love the music and I don't mind hard rock and heavy music in the morning, so it doesn't bother me. So, Shane, way on, rock on, let's go. But giving a warning, it's not smooth jazz.
Into the world war, 70s, a breath after the war. Life was confusing because of my age. Shut my eyes open for tomorrow's escape. I can't help the way.
Awesome. So again, you can go get details. And yes, Gerald is reminding me for Canadian people that want to support. There is a GoFundMe that was also created by their daughter to help support. So I will grab that link and I will link it into the description for this video. That way, anyone who does want to support in a different capacity, if you have the ability to, definitely go and check it out. And the details of the damage and stuff, I think, is included into their GoFundMe page as to how it was affected. I mean, they got so much flooding and trees falling down on, I think it was on like the reptile buildings and on their home and such. So it was pretty heavily impacted. But now on to much more positive news. So we have a fun guest today, and it's spooky season. So we kind of brought in a little like spooky themed guest, which is a lot of fun. So I will get that song up ready, and we're going to bring in Lily from Ghoulish in just a second. Where is it? Aha. Good morning, Lily. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good morning. How are you doing today?
It's been a busy morning. I know we were talking backstage, and it's been, I feel like my brain is going a mile a minute right now because there's just so much on the go. Haven't been as organized as I would like to have been. That's for sure.
Fair enough. I feel like there's a lot of Sundays that tend to be like that, but this one especially with Thanksgiving. Like I feel like the almost not really the burden, but having to like prepare and clean the house and make sure everything's like ready to go. That's like a whole extra step on top of the reptile stuff, right? So
Yeah,
kind of have to go out of your way to do a bit extra.
for sure. So do you have family at your place this weekend too, eh?
So there was yesterday, and then
Okay.
today I'm actually at my grandparents' house. We went out
Okay.
camping on their property actually last night. It was absolutely beautiful, aside from the chill, of course. But
Yeah.
this morning I basically spent most of it packing everything back up because we heard that it was supposed to get rainy and everything. So don't want
Okay.
everything getting soaked. So
Yeah.
became a bit
Well,
of a rush.
and that's the thing, for people who live in a warmer climate, us Canadians, we still go camping in October.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
but if it's gonna rain, it takes like you don't want to get it soaked because it takes a lot longer to dry in this weather. Like there's just no way it's gonna happen unless you
No,
like lay
no,
it
of
out
course
somewhere.
not.
And it gets so cold. Like I've been having frost, like on like even layers of ice when there's like a condensation and stuff on my car. Like it's just
Yeah.
wild. And I'm like, oh, okay, we're getting into the season now that I gotta start my car in the morning before I get out of the house, or else I'll be sitting in
Yeah.
this cold car and waiting for it to thaw.
The curse, the absolute curse of winter. I don't mind winter too much, but man, I do not like those days where you have to wake up like a whole 20, 30 minutes extra
Yeah.
just to make sure your car is warm enough to get out of the driveway. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And then being on the farm, I can tell you farm chores in the wintertime are
Yeah, you were talking about
not
the farm. I can't
spectacular.
imagine. Oh my gosh.
Well, you hope for a good winter. You wanna make sure it's not going to be too snowy because that's a lot of plowing, and we make
Yeah.
so many trails to get to like different fields for hay and so on. But then you don't want it to be like a wet, like an icy winter, because then
You,
everything is
yeah.
ice and it makes it so difficult to do things because you slide everywhere. And then you don't want your animals to get injured because they're now walking on ice. We did have one winter where it was so weird. Like it would get really warm in the day and then you get rain, then would it freeze
Oh,
overnight and everything was like a skating rink. And then you're just a fine balance to try to find, what do I put on there that's going to be um, not harmful on the animals? Like you can't just go put salt on everything, right?
yeah,
And then
no, I can't imagine.
yeah, so we were doing like the muck from like the shavings and stuff from the stalls because that helps kind of break it apart and make it choppier so it's not as slippy. But then in the spring you can kind of drag it around and it helps with the grass growth. So you find little tricks and things, right, that are going to help.
Yeah, of course. At least it kind of got like a double, a double use there. You're saying it helps in the springtime too. So, I mean,
Yeah,
especially with all like with how heavy and wet the snow tends to be, I feel like it almost like drowns out the plants before they get a chance to grow. So having that
yeah,
nutrient to help bounce back, I bet is pretty good.
yeah. My husband's saying, okay, so for the let me see. Oh, for the bods. So it's vehicle, house, business, all affected. And then there's the fat man showing love. Chris is saying, yeah, I'm showing off the yams. Of course. Wouldn't put it past you for a comment like that, Chris. But Chris, I'm wearing Bronx down your shirt. This is the Bronx Down Under. So he had another podcast that was unfortunately short-lived because it was actually quite hilarious. But they had Bronx Down Under because it was two guys from New York and then one guy from
Okay.
Australia. So it was kind of like a combined effort. But now these shirts are he had a whole bunch of shirts left over and the podcast wasn't is not there anymore. So we have a vintage
Oh
shirt on
no.
today.
Like collectors, basically. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
now it's a collector's item at this point.
Very
So
niche.
Lily, how long have you been breeding crested geckos for now? Like when did this get started?
Whew. Well, breeding Crested Geckos, I want to say started back in like 2019, 2020. I got my first Crested Gecko in 2019. I want to say the early in the year. And then
Okay.
moving forward from that, I started volunteering at the Reptile Wrangler located in Barrie. And from that, I was rescuing and rehabilitating like even before getting into Crested Geckos with leopard geckos, corn snakes, just like even keeping it that narrow, bearded dragons, basically any kind of like overly common pet that ended up being kind of like surrendered on Kijiji, like if someone couldn't take care of it anymore, struggling with vet bills. It didn't really matter how far they were in Ontario. I was kind of going out of my way with my boyfriend to go pick up
Okay.
these animals and nurse them back to health and rehabilitate them. And after COVID kind of narrowed things down a little bit on travel, that's when I decided to kind of get into Crested Gecko breeding and further kind of educating myself with different species. And New
Yeah.
Caledonian species specifically really piqued my interest. I'd worked with a lot of desert and arid climate species and a lot of snakes and stuff like that, but never once have I worked with crested geckos. So they were super exciting to get into. And my first one that I got, Cosmos, she was a complete accident gecko. Like, it was supposed to be another rescue situation where I had a family friend that was offering up this gecko. They didn't really describe what kind it was. And because it was of my mother's friend, she wasn't too educated on them either. So she's like, well, my friend needs help with their gecko. Seeing as you are so, like, mindful about them, would you take this one on? And I
Mhm.
assumed that I was taking on another Leo. So of course I set things up, ready to accommodate them, see what they're about. And I get this crested gecko with their whole tank dropped on my doorstep,
Oh
basically.
no.
And I'm like, what is this creature? I have never seen any of you in my life before. So within one night, I spent probably 6 to 8 hours just deep diving on crested geckos on the internet, like studying this little girl, just making sure she was healthy and stuff like that, asking questions on Instagram because I just wanted to make sure I was doing the absolute best I could. And
Yeah.
honestly, the second I got as soon as I found out as much as I could at the time, I fell right in love. And so from there on, when I started volunteering at the Reptile Wrangler, I started taking on once again like any kind of geckos that I took interest in that had good quality genetics or healthy lineage and stuff like that, because that
Yeah.
ultimately is what it is most important, right? But yeah, no, 2020 is when I started. And so I'm only 4 years in this hobby, I believe. So I'm pretty new, I'd like to say, pretty beginner. I
Yeah.
don't know a whole lot on genetics. I would like to say I kind of know like mid to like surface level because I'd like to still ask questions. I still like to think that I need to be educated, of course. There's always still room for
Yeah.
growth. So,
But you're
yeah.
taking your time to do that, right? You're not rushing into it and you're like, I'm going to
No,
learn and kind of, as you learn, if there's things you want to work with and kind of bring on, then you go from there.
absolutely, yeah. And I
Mm.
found even with creating the Ghoulish Exotics brand, I didn't really establish that as a brand until about like maybe 2.5 years afterwards, just because I wanted to make sure the projects that I was working with and the geckos that I was working with, their health was ultimately, good quality. And sometimes you don't know that until you keep them for over a course of a few years, right? You really need to study
Yeah.
them. So after I got certain breeders and stuff like that, I really held back on trying to promote myself that way or trying to sell anything that way until I could like accurately guarantee that the health and the quality of the geckos that I were producing were like a good ethical quality, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So, where did the name come from? Would you what like how did you
Oh.
come up with that name?
So before gecko breeding, I was super duper into art. Saying that as if it's still not a thing, but I paint like all the time.
Okay.
I used to vend at a lot of like witchy art markets and stuff like that.
Okay.
I went to Georgian College for about a year in arts design and fundamentals, so I took a lot of like graphic design and animation courses and stuff like that too. So I got pretty educated on that front, and then was the birth of Lilith Ghoul, it was the brand that I used for selling art and stuff like that.
Okay.
Um, so
So like your pen
naturally,
name.
basically,
Basic
yeah, it's
yeah.
almost like an alias, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Internet alias. And after I created that, toyed around with it, did my art stuff, ended at those markets. It just kind of translated into Ghoulish Exotics fairly well. I didn't just want to keep it as like geckos, right? Because I
Yeah.
have a very wide variety of reptiles at this point in time now, so
Yeah.
couldn't keep it just the little lizard guys.
Well, it allows you to with exotics, it allows you to expand and change if you want to
Exactly, yeah.
without having to rebrand. Because at the end of the day, you do have a logo and there's geckos in the logo and such, but logos, I mean, you can revamp a logo and change artwork
Oh, for sure, yeah.
as it goes, but like having the name itself, the name is what really I find is what people remember. And then if they've had that experience with you and they want a word of mouth, that's the lasting thing that kind of sticks, right?
Yeah, you really need,
So
like, a solid name that's easy, like, to roll off the tongue, it's memorable, and it's also easy to attach, like, a good experience to, right? So
yeah, Yeah, like for me, when I did Gecko Diva, I'm like, well, I'm limiting myself to geckos, but it's not anything like crested geckos, so I can work
Yeah.
with other geckos.
Other geckos, yeah. There's still kind of like a broad range with that one, so not
Yeah,
too
yeah,
limited.
yeah. And then my husband has VIP morphs, so I mean, between the two, I'm sure we can cover all bases.
Diversify, yeah, of course.
100%. Um, so it's a fun name for our spooky season. And then you have like, did you design your own logo or did you have somebody else design the logo for you?
So I've actually been to a handful of artists now, I believe. My first
Okay.
artist that I started commissioning like a few years ago was Neko Gecko. I've honestly been to her like a dozen times at this point. I've got a little folder of all the different gecko commissions I've gotten. I've got memorial pieces done by Neko Gecko as well. She's just absolutely so
Okay.
lovely to work with, and the prices, she's so honest and open about that kind of stuff, so can't go wrong there. Another artist I went to was Runic Rage. They're a really smaller artist, really small. It was actually by chance that I found them on Instagram. But they were
Okay.
posting a lot of like gecko and like frog studies, and I was actually really attracted to their art style. So a few more of my designs that I've posted in my early days were commissioned by them. And
Okay.
then I have some art designs that I've done myself, but not too many. I actually prefer to commission other artists for my gecko brand, because as an
Okay.
artist, I like to support other artists. So I'd rather
Yeah.
get other people to kind of make their stuff that way. Um,
Yeah. It's
but
nice
yeah.
to hear that too, because I know that, with AI and stuff, it gets a little bit more challenging for artists nowadays,
Oh, of
right? To be able to,
course.
like, I'm the same way. I like to support artists if I can. Um, I haven't done art myself in a long time, and for logo kind of stuff, not my jam. I would
It
have
gets
to
super
have so much more
technical.
learning to get to that, and I'm like, no, we're
Yeah.
good. I end up gravitating more towards music when I wanted to like do my art,
Fair
right? So we
enough.
were like doing,
Yeah.
I was like, I'll do a band instead of doing, you know, designs and so on.
That's a lot of
Um,
fun though, so
yeah, we got do a rock band for a little bit. I had a face.
yeah.
Did you like do you with your art, do you do designs and logos for other people as well, or is that something that
Quite
you're gonna
frequently,
expand?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So earlier this year, I just started offering them. It was more of like a test run, so I was only offering them for like maybe 15 to like $20 per design. I didn't really care about
Okay.
how long it took me. I more so cared about getting the piece done and having the customer happy in the end, obviously. So
Yeah.
I did a lot of trial runs, like SJ Reptiles, Catchy Geckos. There are a few examples of people that have commissioned me for logos and have successfully posted them as their profile, and it looks super satisfying. Um,
Yeah.
I have done some memorial pieces before, and those are always lovely to do, especially when it comes to like the really personalized details and requests, like symbolism or any kind of specific plants that people want. It's really
Yeah.
endearing to hear like the ideas behind those symbolisms, and yeah, no. So I've been doing quite a bit of art, I feel like, over the year, but it just started this year for other companies when it comes to like the logo and other pieces and stuff like that. Even sticker designs and merch, that's something that I also really enjoy doing for others. So, and I feel like that's kind of picked up. The last couple months, I slowed down on offering art commissions though, just because like the geckos, I've taken on a few more, pairs and stuff like that in other projects. So I was like, I need to focus on other things right now, right? So I think you might have froze.
I don't know what's going on. This is the third time I've frozen. Like
It's okay.
usually it's been good timing because it's when you're talking and I'm sitting there and I'm like, "Oh no." Like I kind of am stuck. But
I couldn't
it's
tell if it
funny.
was me or not. I was
No,
like, I hope I am not buffering.
I'm pretty sure it's me. And I keep looking at my Wi-Fi access and it's showing strong, so I don't know what's going on. Gerald, if you're listening and you're streaming on the internet, get off the internet. Just go on 5G. Um, we're in the country, so that's a challenge for us for the internet. I do work from home like 2 days a week right now, but it does allow me
Oh,
like,
yeah.
so we had like Rogers internet at first, which was super difficult to keep a connection because the tower was bombarded with with the new houses and stuff that were built in like little suburb areas in the
Oh
country.
my
So
gosh,
even though
yeah.
we're on a farm, when they build a whole bunch of houses and they only have one tower to like connect everyone to, then you have too many people for that tower. It causes problems. But we have the new one, the Starlink from Elon Musk, right? Which is that satellite. And that one
Yes.
seems to be doing really, like, for the most part, it's really good. But we do find recently that it's been having a lot of weird, glitchy things that happen. And I know
Mm.
Natty had mentioned things about like solar flares and like just this
Yeah, that's been
week.
a
I
big
don't know if
thing
you were able
lately.
to see it, but those northern lights were just insane. And I've never seen northern lights that
The
crazy in
worst
this
part
area.
about that, I was outside on my way home between
Okay.
8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and that's when things were peaking. I never looked up at the sky once. I was so tired from work and so like focused on getting home. I did not look up. And then the next day when I checked my phone at the times people were posting, I was like, oh my gosh, I am so blind. Why did I not look up? I missed out on such an experience. So,
Yeah. No, it was
did you
pretty
get a chance
wild.
to see it? Yeah.
Yeah, it surrounded our farm and it was like bright
Oh,
pinks
beautiful.
and like purples, like the colors were wild. And it's hard to see with the naked eye. Like you see the
Hmm.
color and stuff, but you didn't see as much of like, I guess, the design of it. But through a camera lens, you saw it really, really well. But then later on, at night, it was more green, but then you could see them
Oh,
dancing. So it
that's
wasn't as
cool.
bright and vivid, but you could actually see the movement, which was really neat.
Yeah, that is.
Um,
Oh my gosh.
aquatic moose, I'm not sure. So male maker means something different in Cresties and ball pythons. No, I've never heard male makers in Cresties, to be 100% honest. That would be a new thing for me for Cresties. Ball
Seeing, yeah,
pythons, definitely heard male makers. I mean, it's connected, for instance, like banana. Banana, you'll have a male maker, depending on whether it's a male or female that
or female,
produces
yeah.
the banana, right? If it's a female that's the banana that's producing the babies, and you're gonna have females, and if it's the male that's the banana, then you end up having males and they're male makers. So yeah, I haven't heard anything for Cresties, so that would be a new one for me. And Cresties aren't one either for to be able to choose a sex with incubation either, because there are many reptiles where, depending on the temperature of incubation, you will determine whether or not it's female or male. That I
Yeah,
haven't heard either. Oh, I think just elaborated or heard it in gargoyle geckos from Tiki's geckos. Well, I don't
that's
know. I don't
interesting.
deal with gargs, so I'd have a little bit more research on that one.
I'm just getting Gargs together. I have a black and white
Yeah.
stripe project that I'm kind of been building. My female just hit breeding weight. She's been laying duds this year. And then I just actually picked up I won a gecko, a gargoyle gecko from the Gecko Loft.
Okay.
Now there's pores visible. It's a male. He's only like 13, 14 grams right now though, so he's still pretty small. Got a little bit of time to wait around, but I'm hoping in the next couple years I'm going to be able to pair those, get two up, and make some lovely black and white babies. But that'll
Awesome.
definitely be a thing to test out if they do have something like that coming out, because I've actually never heard of that either. So
Yeah, well, and Tiki's is pretty good with his information. Like,
yeah, oh for
he
sure.
posts pretty detailed information in his videos, like even coming from how they incubate eggs, how they set up their bins, like even genetics talk and all. He's a pretty good reliable source to get info. So I'm gonna have to do a little bit of research. Like, it's not like I'm getting into gargs or anything myself, but you know,
It's still
it,
neat,
it
right?
it's good to know. It gives you that
Yeah, of
extra
course.
knowledge. That's for sure.
It's a little fact nugget. It's good to
Yeah,
have.
Natty says I never heard that about Gargs, but that's interesting. Yeah, I know. Natty, we're gonna have to do
Yeah.
a deep dive. Deep dive this Sunday. So let's bring up some pictures of some of the geckos that you sent my way of your top favorites, and we can start talking about
Yes.
the geckos and what projects you're looking to work with.
Sushimi. Oh my gosh. So I actually got this lovely man from Connor and Aaron's Geckos. It was
Okay.
earlier this year in spring. The pairing that they had, I believe it was a lily and then a red bicolor. I forget the names. Usually the parents I sometimes gap on the names of because some people use numbers and then some people actually give them names.
Okay.
But I have pictures of the parents and stuff like that too. So lineage seems pretty solid. They even have, I believe it was the dad they had the parents photos of too. So the lineage goes pretty far
Okay.
back, thankfully. But this guy here, that is him fired up, and it is the absolute prettiest shade of like pinky red I have seen throughout the Cresties that I've owned so far.
Yeah.
And I also have a younger female that's displaying similar shades. I got her from the urban reptile or the urban gecko. I know they can be
Okay.
hit or miss, and unfortunately, I can't track back lineage, so not as high end in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to kind of work with more, not my own authentic pink line, if you will, because I feel like a lot of people are
Yeah.
trying to like claim that they have pink, but it's hard to get true pinks, right? So I want to
Yeah.
try and like work with the lily gene that's there and that light pink hypo kind of look and try to see what I can go from there, because I believe he is phantom if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he looks like a phantom lily. So the phantom
Yeah,
gene in there, like it really it mutes out that top dorsal, right? And makes it even more
yeah,
pinkish.
it's beautiful.
Um, yeah, it's really cool. And then the hypo, like with the hypo stacking, I mean, the more you stack the hypo in it, the more you're going to get that lighter shade in color, and you can kind of get a
Oh,
different shade. So
yeah.
I know hypos are one of my things. So I love hypos.
Oh, that's good to hear then. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna have to look at more of your geckos too, because even when I visited your table at the last expo, I was like oohing and awing at like everything you had out. So
Yeah,
I
it's
had
a
to have
work
some
in progress,
self-restraint.
right?
Yeah.
I started around the same time you did. So, I mean, that's the thing. It's kind of a work in progress and it evolves. And
Aw,
specifically for projects like Hypo, that's something that is not just immediate overnight because unless you're buying
no.
animals that are already stacked on both sides for the breeding pair and that are going to be compatible hypos and that they're not going to have similar lineage either, right? um
Exactly. You
it
don't want
makes it
any
a little
relation that way.
yeah, so it makes it a little bit difficult to kind of work with it because you're not necessarily always going to get the level of brightness, like that lightness that you want from your hatchlings. And it's
Of
also something that
course.
I find that shows up as they get older, so you kind of have to sit on them a little bit. You can't
It's a
just
waiting game. It really is a waiting game,
yeah.
and especially with the hypo stacking that you're mentioning, that's why it's so critical to be able to like trace that lineage back. Because again, like if you can't confirm it, you're gonna make that pair. It's a 50-50 chance that you're gonna end up getting what you're actually looking for, right? So it's
Yeah,
really critical to look back at it.
and it really depends on like you're saying, like the lineage, right? And what form it is
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
how to what extent generation wise has it been included in the pairing and the lineage. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting one to work with. And then like with the yellows, you have the C2s, right? So that
Of
combines the
course,
hypo
yeah.
with the tangerine. So then you get a different effect on that as well. So yeah, no, so you're looking at doing more of the reds and the pinks with the lilies and
Yeah, for
they're
sure.
always
I've
so pretty.
They really are. I've got one male, who's about to hit breeding weight. He's a pretty nice, like high coverage lily. I didn't include him in this batch of photos, unfortunately. But
Okay.
he as well is hopefully going to be paired to another kind of like lighter pink female that's just hitting breeding weight. I don't tend to post a lot of my pairs if I'm close to pairing. It's almost like a secret little surprise, you know. Once I get the eggs, then I like to be like, "Hey, these guys paired. It worked out. There we
Yeah.
go."
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So but this lily that I have that I'm crossing, he's more red than anything else. So I definitely know I'm not going to be getting anything like I was just mentioning with sashimi and the project that I have for the future. But because of the non-relation between those guys and the rest, there's hopefully like more to go into there, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, no, awesome.
yeah.
Who's the next little ghoul?
Okay.
Creme brulee.
So I included a couple babies and a few adults with this one, just because I have like a huge amount of geckos. It was hard to pick 5 adults.
Yeah.
But this guy here was the first hatchling I got out of my Super Dalmatian pairing this year.
Okay.
And he is my absolute favorite, specifically because of those nice fat little ink spots he's got on him. That
Yeah.
little black patch on his head. He had just went through shed recently, so this picture is about a few weeks old now. But with every shed, that ink blot just seems to get larger and larger, almost like this one eyebrow. And it is my favorite detail on a gecko that I've ever seen, especially when you look at him head on. But
Yeah.
I got essentially exactly what I was hoping for from this pairing.
Okay.
Um, Casper was a Super Dalmatian produced by Wizarding Geckos. He was paired up, I believe, through Toronto Gecko Co. Produced these nice ink blot babies, but it wasn't what he was looking to create, so I ended up taking him on myself.
Okay.
And then I ended up taking on S'more. She was a pretty lightly colored yellow pinstripe, kind of showing like hints of like the tangerine, the orange, the same way that Casper was through his chins and through his belly and stuff like that. So there was an interesting thing to work with there. So when I
Yeah.
crossed the two together, those traits seemed to just mesh together beautifully.
Yeah.
I've hatched out, I think, 3 to 4 different pinstripes, and then there was some. I believe there were some phantom ones too, but they were all super Dal right out the egg. Basically, their bellies
Okay.
are completely coated with the dots. So, but creme brulee was one of
Wow.
my favorites out of the pairing so far, and they're growing like weeds. So
That's
I've yet to
they're
weigh
good
them.
eaters.
Oh my gosh, yeah, for sure. Like the eggs themselves were like the come hatching size, the tip of my thumb. They were huge. And they're
Yeah.
like twice the size of some of the babies that I was hatching out last year. So there's definitely something wonderful at work there.
Okay. Awesome. So you're looking to do more of a super dal, like are you looking to bring pattern into the super dal and kind of do
So with
like
these guys, because Casper is mostly patternless and pretty much paper white, he doesn't really fire up or fire down. He goes like this weird muted gray color and then this
okay.
solid white that I mentioned. So I was hoping to try to produce more things similar to that, seeing as S'more was also kind of lining up with that.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I honestly was just hoping for your just run of the mill yellow super Dallas with this line. There wasn't too much of a goal. I just wanted to see what I could get out of it ink blot
Okay,
wise.
awesome.
Um, Somnus, which is the other picture that's about to come up, he's more of the project I've been looking forward to.
Let's bring him
But
up
I'm
on this. Is he the next
if he's the
one
next
or
one. No, that's
no?
Echo.
Okay. Okay.
So I can talk about him a little bit. He
Okay. We'll
was
talk about
produced
Echo and then
by
we'll go into the next one.
yeah. So I'm just going off right now. Oh my gosh.
It's
But
easy to talk about geckos, right?
It really is. I'm like honestly so passionate about them. I'm telling you, once I got my first Cresty, like I just opened up a whole new world for me, whole new passion. Um,
So
this
it says,
guy,
so cute. What a great opportunity to take photos of our reptiles on pumpkins. Yeah, but
yes.
Lily has pumpkins in the logo, so you get to take pumpkin pictures all the time.
Oh, yeah, I've every day. I even like bought like 100 plus like purpley green leaves. I'm sure you saw my previous photo shoots, and I
Yeah.
covered my whole light box with them. So after every, every so often I'll like sanitize them, switch them out with the other gecko. Oh, that process is like so long, but so worth it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Um, but the pumpkins they were selling in like little bags, like the mini ones, the batches at no frills, and I was like, I
Yeah.
can't miss out on this opportunity. You can't go
No,
wrong
of
with mini
course not.
pumpkins. So,
All right, so
but
tell us
yeah,
about Echo.
so Echo was produced by Toronto Gecko Co. He's got pretty great lineage as well. He came with this nice little birth certificate with the parents' codes and everything. Again, got
Okay.
pictures of the parents, so it was really nice to see that. He was sold to me as a patternless at first because he did not have any portholes, did not have any of that light coloration to him. He looked pretty bland. So I was like,
Okay.
okay, cool. This nice little patternless little guy. And then he turned into this beast with these magical, like snowflaking almost kind of down the sides, it looks like.
Yeah.
Um, but his crests are like absolutely the structure is just fantastic. And he's super dark, fires up super dark, similar to the proven charcoal that I have. So I'm hoping that I can incorporate him into my kind of charcoal dark base line, if you will.
Okay.
Because I have a few females that have Dal spots that I want to try to remove, if that makes sense. Like kind of breed out, being kind of a spot
Yeah.
snob there. But clean dark bases really work well. I'm finding nowadays. So I'm hoping to produce some more clean dark base babies.
Yeah, and they've like I like some breeders have come out with like really dark phantoms that are so black. Like even darker than like exanthic stuff that I've seen, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
I produced
wild to see
some
how dark.
last season. I had a few go off on some trades and stuff like that, but because I didn't personally own the sire of these dark base babies, I didn't want to like sell them for like a higher price than I should.
Mhm.
So they were like 75 to like 100 or trade a piece, which is pretty low, but
Mhm.
But they were also really solid dark.
Okay.
Oh, I wanted to say charcoal, but didn't want to guarantee that, if that makes sense. Just because unless you know the lineage, that word's going
Yeah.
to become like verbal garbage at this point, just bouncing around the noggin. Um, but yeah, it's so critical. Lineage is so critical when it comes to breeding. Because if you can't guarantee what you're going to be able to produce, how are you going to know what you're going to be able to get, right? So
Yeah, and that's the thing, and the charcoal stuff, that I know that's a bit of a controversial one because
it's messy.
a lot of people just they'll name them charcoals, but I'm like, unless you're getting it from altitude's line, like,
Exactly. Yeah.
like,
I,
yeah,
yeah.
I have one girl that I brought in a charcoal from the States, and I know that it's from a pairing from altitude's line, right? But then I have my other dark phantom male here that I got here in Canada, and I have no lineage on it. So I mean, it's a dark phantom. That's what it is. It's not,
Yeah.
I'm
Unless
not
you
going
can
to
prove it
label it as
out.
charcoal. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's
Like I was
exciting.
saying, yeah. Thank you. I only have one proven charcoal too, as I was saying. But when they look so similar, you want to. That's the problem I think people are
Mhm.
having is they think that they kind of know. You get that education on the morphs and stuff. So when you think you're physically able to identify traits, you almost kind of. I feel like those people don't really pay attention to the genetic side of things. So they just want to call it charcoal because it looks charcoal. That's pretty much all it is,
Well,
unfortunately.
it gets messy because people get confused between a genetic name versus something that's named because of a lineage.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you'll see that, like, another one example was the monochrome one, right? That was a lineage based name, just like charcoal is a lineage based name.
Base
So
name,
when you're
yeah.
getting like lily white, that's a genetic name, right? But if someone's working with um a specific project and they're expanding on like focusing on one specific trait to refine it to something that's really niche to them, then that's when you get into names like charcoal where it's
Yes, exactly.
something that's
Yeah.
coined because of the lineage, right? Cold fusion, for instance. Cold fusion is a type of hypo that's stacked, right?
Yeah.
But that cold fusion is not. It's just the lineage.
It's
You can't just say
specific.
something's
Yeah.
hypo that's cold fusion unless it's come from that lineage.
Yeah, you're just pulling it out of your pocket at that point.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
it gets a little confusing sometimes. Yeah. So
It
you're
does,
looking to
yeah.
continue like the dark phantom
The
stuff
dark
with the
base,
sky.
yeah. Phantom and then the snowflake patterning, if anything comes out of that, I'll be more than happy, but no, dark base is pretty much the only goal with that guy there.
Awesome. And I think the next one is the one you wanted to talk about, right?
Yeah. Sorry, my headset kind of died there, so I'm just gonna go
Oh,
media mode on my phone. Yeah, I think I can still hear you there.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep, now I can. Perfect.
Perfect. We're
So
good.
Somnus was from, oh my gosh, Lonnie's Geckos, I believe. Just turn
Okay.
that up a bit. And he came all the way from Montreal. So I made sure his parents had no relation to anything that I had over here. Tried to trace things back, and things seemed to be good. Um,
Okay.
so I
Did you
kind
say
of
from
remember one of
Lanny's
his parents'
Geckos?
names. Sorry?
Did you say Lanny's Geckos? LANI?
Lanny's Geckos. Yeah,
So I
Lonnie's or
have some
Lanny's.
Lanny's Geckos. So what's the parents for this one?
Chili Pepper and Atticus.
Okay, so my dark phantom guy that has no spots but only a couple on his tail, Ghost Pepper, is a chili pepper and Atticus baby too.
No way!
So
That's
that's
so
the dark
exciting. Oh my
phantom that I just
gosh.
posted this week, so they're related.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
Wow. Oh, that's so
really nice
exciting. Yeah, because I
structure
haven't
on
met
these
anyone yet
guys.
who has geckos from her, so
Yeah, I have a
sorry?
couple. We'll talk offline after, but I have a couple from her.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I can't wait for that. Um,
Yeah.
sorry, there was a cat meowing. He's kind of looking for attention, I guess. There's a but no, with Somnus, I'm really excited because I got a female red bicolor doll from Reptile Wrangler from his high red doll line as well.
Okay.
The parents of her absolutely stunning. The female was like this nice crimson color, but Somnus is kind of like this deep maroon. And he's also got like this nice ink blot as well, but it's like completely red. I'm not sure what you would call that. Unfortunately, it's not in this picture, but it's like dime size, just this huge blotch of just red spots.
Okay.
Almost like a paradox. So crossing her with him because they're only covered in like red and black spots, hoping to produce more high red and black spotted geckos, of course.
Oh, fun.
Yeah,
I
just more
find
super
my
red, high red stuff.
Yeah, I find my
So,
guy is very weird color. Like he'll fire down this weird olive color and
yeah,
then
it's like
fire
green.
up almost black, like almost jet
Yeah, it's
black,
kind of
except
interesting.
for like the top of his head. And then his throat has you can see it's het red in there because the throat has the reddish tones.
Yeah, yeah. I've noticed the olive because when he's completely fired down, he's almost like this faded, like fern green color all through the top of the head.
Yeah.
Um, and this nice peachy kind of like undertone. But then, yeah, fired up, it's like this dark, dark color.
Yeah.
Pardon
And
me.
as soon as you said Lanny's geckos and I saw the look of this one, I'm like, I bet you they're
They're
related.
related. Yeah, it's neat because Sashimi and Yule, which are the two only lily whites I own, when I bought Sashimi, or sorry, traded Sashimi from Connor and Aaron, I had no idea. They're like a second cousin to Yule.
Okay.
I guess they're like grandparents. I think it was their grandmother, if you will call it that. It was
Okay.
actually the mother to Yule or one of Yule's siblings. So they're like very distantly related, all because of Toronto Gecko Co. It was kind of interesting to see. So it's
Okay.
neat to learn that you have one of Lonnie's geckos too, or Lanny's.
Well, and she's not around anymore, right? She closed shop and shut down her Instagram. So
I
it's
didn't even know because I bought the
yeah,
gecko from her and would routinely tag her and stuff, and then I noticed that she kind of just disappeared, and I wasn't as active on Instagram, so I didn't really know
yeah,
what happened there.
yeah. No,
It's
she
unfortunate.
disappeared
Aw,
and
it's always
sold
so
her
sad.
geckos. But yeah, so
Yeah.
it's that's why it's kind of exciting to see somebody else that has one of her geckos.
Yeah,
It's kind
small
of because
world.
I
Oh my
got
gosh.
mine was just like a little itty bitty baby when I got mine, right? To see
Yes.
so
My guy was like
yeah,
finger sized when he came in the mail, and it was the first ever gecko I had shipped in. So I was like, I could not sleep the night before when he was on his way. And then even when he popped up, I was like, yes, he's coming to the door. Like, it's always so exciting getting them shipped in.
yeah, 100%. And then you shared a Garg as well as your fifth one, right?
Yeah,
Pumpkin Jack.
so yeah, he was one of my more recent Gargs as well. The one that I just received from the Gecko Loft was very much a surprise. So I got Pumpkin Jack just before I won Cobweb. But Pumpkin Jack is about, I want to say, 10-ish grams, 8 to 10 grams, kind of gapping on the weight there. But once again, another black and white Garg fires up extremely dark and is displaying traits of like an orange red stripe,
Okay.
which is also exhibiting in my ready to go female. She's at weight and stuff like that, laying duds. I mentioned that earlier, but she's also got the similar kind of like orange stripe as well. So I'm hoping to create kind of like an autumn line kind of geckos, if you
Oh,
will, kind
fun.
of call it like a spooky gargoyle line. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm really excited for those guys. I'm not sure if this guy will pick female or male, so I'll have to hold on and wait to see pores because right now they're just too small. There's no way I'm going to be seeing that much of anything. So,
Okay.
um, but fingers crossed. I'm hoping for female.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
So you're doing right now you're doing crested geckos and gargs. Is there
And
anything
Chihuahuas.
and chihuahuas? Okay.
Just recently, yeah. Responsible Reptile, I picked up. Well, I already have a high red mainland pair that have been producing eggs pretty routinely. I've got two eggs in incubation that are coming up on 150 days, so
Okay.
soon, soon. And they just laid another batch, but then I got two other pairs from Responsible Reptile. Bandolino, he is a low contrast white collar chewy. So the white
Okay.
collar is there. It's just very, very subtle. But they're
Okay.
from Dragonborn Exotics all the way from Minnesota. So he's
Oh,
from
neat.
very, very far away. And I was lucky enough to get a deal from them, from the females that they produce too. So they had another high-end male. I'm gapping on what morph they called this one, but they're all Pine Island basically. And they had two
I
females
think
that they had
there's
produced from previous years that were ready to go.
yeah.
So they basically matched up the males with appropriate females for me, and we talked about it for a few hours while we were at their place. And I was able to grab a couple more chewy pairs. So
That's
super
awesome.
hyped that way.
I've been looking at chewies lately, and I think dragon was it what is it dragon
Dragonborn Exotics, I
born?
think.
I
Yeah.
think that's who I was looking at in the States because I wanted to import something, and they had some different lineage names and stuff that they had given them to kind of keep track of certain projects if that's who I if that's who it is that I was looking at. But I know they
Yeah,
had
I got like a
dragon in the
bunch of
name, so
paperwork with the white collar that
yeah,
I got. So they really break things down for you. It's really cool.
that's awesome. Are you planning on like eventually expanding into other species of geckos or reptiles in general, or like what's the
Yes.
goal moving forward?
Um, the goal that I'm moving towards, sorry, what was that last part? I think
Yeah,
you
like
cut out
what's your
there.
goal? Like let's say in the next 5 years, like is there specific projects you're wanting to work on, or is there different
Hmm.
like are you planning or hoping to expand on different species of reptiles or
Oh, definitely. So, I currently have a really high expression veiled male chameleon. I've had him for a few years now, and he just hit
Mhm,
ready to breed. So I'm hoping to get into chameleons at one point in time. I'm just kind of on the search for a nice female, but with chameleon breeding, I find it's not that it's uncommon, but a lot of people don't track where their chameleons are coming from, I find. So it's really hard to
mhm.
find like a guaranteed to be like high-end female, if you will.
Yeah,
Um, Aside from that, I have two beautiful female Leachianas. One's a high pink Pine Island. She's huge, like forearm sized, huge, and she's got
yeah.
like the craziest attitude. So finding a male for her is going to be definitely like needle in a haystack kind of thing.
Mhm.
So Leachianas, hopefully in the next 2 years. I've worked with ball pythons before, but it wasn't like too, it's very saturated. So it was more so for the
Yeah.
experience and for the education, Um,
Gerald's
but
gonna take
I'm more
offense to
so
that. He's gonna be
sorry.
like, "There." My husband's gonna take offense to that if he's still listening.
No,
He's like,
no,
"Very
no, no,
saturated."
it's I don't
No,
wanna
I'm
jump into
joking
ball
because it's
python
the
breeding.
it's the ongoing joke because we always make fun of, "Oh, you wanna become a ball python breeder?"
Yeah, yeah, I totally get that. People are like
Yeah,
they always turn up nose, I feel sometimes. They're like, "There's so many of them," but my opinion is
yeah,
that I don't wanna jump into a hobby where there's already so many more experienced people and, if they're trying to make their living more so off of it or whatnot. I don't want to kind of like intrude on a hobby that's already been kind of established for so long. And I'm not
yeah.
I'm not huge on ball pythons myself, so unless I'm like super committed, I don't want to like put my foot in the door where someone else's might be, right?
Yeah,
Um,
fair enough. I think, like, it
right?
has its place too, like, if ever you do w get into, like, niche things like that, that it's like, "Oh, okay, well, maybe I wanna do 1 or 2, clutches a year," but it'll be more, like, very specific project that you're working
Yeah.
towards, right? Not, like, to the extent where you're looking to do a whole bunch of different things.
It's very much about intention, I feel, right? Like what you're actually looking to do.
Yeah.
Um, Which brings me back around to your one question, like breeding reptiles and stuff like that. Like, what's like the end goal? What's my motivation in this kind of like area of things? Um, I'm honestly looking to just learn. Like, I'm in the hobby
Mhm,
just to educate myself, help educate other people, and promote healthy animal care and ethical animal care. Just
mhm.
as someone who's rescued and rehabilitated so many different like species and seen some of the like environments that certain animals were in, it's absolutely heartbreaking. I've lost a few rescues of my own when they've been like too hard to save, if that makes sense. Like if
Yeah.
they're, yeah. So I've seen some rough stuff, and I feel as if there's not a lot of proper education out there on the internet. The information gets so misconstrued sometimes with so many different opinions. I feel it's
Mhm,
so important that people are out there to promote and educate and push that care, like the ethical side of things. So I'm truly just a part of this community, a part of Crested Gecko breeding, a part of
mhm.
animal keeping, just to continue to learn and just be educated and to help educate. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much it. They're my absolute
Yeah.
passion. Um, I had kind of like an accident a few years ago. I'm gonna be pretty open about things here, but I kind of lost a lot of use in my left tendon, like in my hand.
Okay.
So I'm unable to work a lot of full-time jobs like most people are. So getting into reptiles was basically like my second chance. I feel it was at having a career or having kind of like a more passionate, fulfilling life, if you will,
Yeah.
because I'm
No,
not
for
able to
sure.
work as hard as other people physically. So reptiles were like that huge gateway into, finding that kind of like big step at life, if that you know what I mean there.
That's awesome, and the education piece is so important, and it's actually really exciting to hear that you're looking at, the veiled chameleons, for instance, because in all honesty, like, veiled chameleons you can find them in so many pet stores. Even like PetSmart will have them. And they're a
Yeah,
really, really low priced reptile animal to buy, but they're a very hard reptile to keep. Like
they are.
we
Yeah,
had our first chameleon was a veiled chameleon, and the one we have now, we have a female panther. Um Blue bar, I want to say. But there's
gorgeous, gorgeous.
not many people that are working with chameleons. I know like Chameleons Canada. I don't think Chameleons Canada does veils though, but I know that he is very active. Like that's what he focuses on: the panther chameleons, Jacksons, and like there's all sorts of different species he works with. But because of their lifespan is so short, you're looking at he does a lot of imports, and unfortunately,
Hmm.
you're looking at wild caught imports. To end up bringing more lineage into it, because when you have only so many that you can produce, and then you have a demand of people who want to work with them, whether it be pets or for breeding projects. So you can't just sell just two breeding projects, right? And then
No,
even then, if you're selling the lineage, and eventually ends up being too closely related, so you do have to still bring in. So there, it does have its place. Um, but that's one thing that I feel like lacking in the reptile community, anyways, in Canada, is that knowledge on chameleons, because it's really easy to get a screened enclosure, like a Repti and get a
yeah,
package and buy a veiled chameleon for $89.99 at a
it's
local
brutal.
PetSmart, and
Yeah.
then not know how to properly care for it. And
And they
like,
get big. Like, a lot of people don't
yeah,
talk about it, but like the male veiled chameleons, people say like, oh, they're only gonna stay like no.
wow,
My
they
guy
get
is
big.
like 7, 8 inches without his tail extended. He is
Yeah.
massive. Like,
And yeah,
and that Reptibreeze, they always sell you on it like, oh, they can stay in this for life. They stay pretty small. They're very handleable. That's not correct either. They have very diverse personalities. Like my male
yeah,
is only okay if he comes out on his own. I can't go in there and grab him. It's a whole other story if I do that. But if
yeah,
his cage is open and he wants to crawl out on me and explore and stuff like that, then that's on him. But a lot of people think
yeah.
they're one of those pets, just like Crested Geckos, where you can just open up the tank and be like, "Come here, little guy," and it's like it's not like
It
that at all.
causes so much stress on them if you go and you
It
grab
does,
them.
yeah.
And the other thing too is people don't realize that veiled chameleons also need um greens in their diet, and that, a lot of people, like, that was a mistake we made when we first got it, when we were new to it. Was it was okay, I thought it was predominant, and that's how they teach you, and they tell you need, oh, it's insects, insects,
It's
insects.
bugs
But like,
only. Yeah, no, it's
yeah,
not.
but veils need greens, they need veggies, they need, like, they need different diet, whereas a panther chameleon, for instance, is, you don't give them greens. Like, panther is
No.
strictly insect. But
Yeah.
then, you need the airflow for the Repti breeze. But then at the same time, when I was talking to Chameleons Canada on it, all of his, what he does is he puts a plastic wrap, like just
Yes.
a, like around three sides of it. So the front side he leaves it open, but the other sides are closed. That way, with the misting, it maintains the humidity. Because the other problem is that you have the ventilation from the screens, but then it gets dry because
It
you
dries
don't
out
have
quite
that
a bit.
humidity
Yeah.
that they need, right? So it's kind of like a fine balance with them. But it's neat that that's something that's missing, is that education side on chameleons. So it is kind of nice, having another person interested in wanting to work with them.
I feel bad because I like neglect to post half of my enclosures. I feel like I elaborate to a lot of
Yeah.
people, even when I work at the Reptile Wrangler pet store in town. Like I talk to people about how elaborate my enclosures are, but I don't take any pictures. But my chameleon enclosure is essentially set up the exact same way you described, just to keep that humidity like in, just
Mhm.
because it does dry out so much. And then the greens thing. I did know a little bit about the greens, but I didn't know what plants they would eat. And I had this
Yeah.
massive marble queen pothos that I put into his enclosure with this amazing, like 4 to 5 foot Benjamin ficus tree. It's huge. So
Mhm.
he's like chilling in this tree, having a great time. I leave for work and come back, and half of this pothos is missing. He is eaten like almost the entire thing, and he's got like this pot
Yeah.
belly. And I'm like, well, now I know to maintain that pothos so you're not chronically obese. Because like I swear he's got
Yeah.
no restraint. You'll hear crunching every so often. He'll just munch away on it.
Yeah, and that's
But
the
yeah,
other
no, I
thing that
found out the
people
hard way
don't
that they
know.
like those.
Yeah, and
Sorry?
the other thing too is you gotta be careful what plants you put in there, because they like to eat it, and you wanna make sure it's
Yeah.
non-toxic.
No, so
Because
I
that's the
only have
other side of
pothos
it.
and the Benjamin tree in there strictly because I found
Yeah,
that out. I'm like, "Okay, you're getting nothing else. This is it." Like, and it's the enclosure is completely filled. That tree, if I threw anything else in there, I feel like the tree would kill whatever else I put in there just because it's so
yeah,
well established. So, like,
yeah,
I might have to change enclosures because the tree roots were starting to like poke through the bottom of the enclosure, even though I have like that hard bottom and the sheets
yeah.
around it and stuff like that. So,
It's wanting to grow even more.
yeah, no, I'm not upset with that, but man, I can't, I'm gonna have to really upgrade things if it wants to, so I don't know if I can do a 6-foot tree in my reptile room, that's a bit much.
I forget what's the name of the podcast. There's a guy in Europe, Petco, and he does tarantulas,
Oh,
mainly
okay.
tarantulas and insects and such. But he did have a panther chameleon, named Felix, and he had a tree in his reptile room,
Oh,
and it was
wow.
like a legit like huge tree, and that was the enclosure. He wasn't enclosed. He
Yeah,
had basically lights on the ceiling for him. It was just in a spot where he wouldn't be able to grab anything to get away from the tree, so he was like living in that tree. But
that
then he had
area,
UVB
yeah.
lights and he had misting that would go onto the tree. And then,
So
he had it kind
enriching.
of blocked off. So like nothing could kind of like, it was still like if he went to the bottom, like and climbed to the bottom of the tree, he wouldn't walk across the floor, so the bottom part was blocked off. But it was
That's
really
good.
neat to see that. I'm like, to have the space and to set up a whole like
One day.
tree for them in there, that would be
Oh my
so
gosh.
awesome.
Yeah, honestly.
Oh, cool. Well, we've hit that hour mark. Thank you very much for joining us today and for sharing, your geckos and the projects you're working with. I'm excited to see the stuff that you're going to post, and
Of
I'm sure we're going
course,
to see
yeah.
more chameleon stuff now.
Yes, chameleon stuff, my Aki monitor, I don't post enough of him either.
Oh
Jasper
yeah.
is kind of like a handful to get pictures of. He kind of moves a mile a minute, so if I'm getting pictures or if I move suddenly, he has a really high food response. I've been nipped so many times just
Okay.
by trying to reach for my phone camera. So I definitely have to get a lot more videos of the other diverse reptiles I have. Like I even recently took on a baby mountain horn dragon. Like that was surrendered to me
Okay.
recently because the person was struggling with caring for it, and he's only
Okay.
like this big, and those guys are apparently pretty friendly. They're a lot more social than the veiled chameleons, if you really want to call it that.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what that little guy is like when he gets bigger too. So there's definitely a lot
Daffy's
more to be putting out there.
reptiles.
Yeah.
Daffy's
Oh,
reptiles is your contact for mountain horn dragons. That's all his stuff. He
Responsible
knows.
Reptile works one-on-one with Daffy's Reptiles and a few other
Okay.
people because they're like only the few people in Ontario that breed mountain horn dragons. I think there's
Okay.
like I can't remember who else they were talking about, but they almost are working together to collaborate to make sure that the captive bred population is pretty steady. Just because apparently they're wild caught really frequently, so
Yeah.
fingers crossed that they establish a really good captive breeding program.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think there's more research, right? They need to make for breeding those species and stuff because not
a
much is
lot
known
more.
about it.
Yeah.
So, no, that's awesome. So, where can people find you? You want to pimp out your socials and.
Absolutely. So anybody can find me on Facebook or on Instagram mostly, just at Ghoulish Exotics. I also have a email for any kind of questions, Q&A type of stuff. If you have any kind of concerns, you guys can reach
Okay.
out to me at ghoulishyexotics@outlook.com. And that's pretty much it. And another thing is,
Awesome.
actually one more thing. If you guys want to see me in person or hang out, come say hi, anything like that, on Fridays and Sundays, you can find me volunteering at the Reptile Wrangler in Barrie, Ontario, 3 to
Okay.
6 p.m. on Fridays, or I believe it's noon to 4 p.m. on the Sundays. But I'm always
Okay.
handing out free stickers, magnets, goodies, stuff like that. And sometimes the productions that I have, like the geckos, I do have them in store for availability sometimes. And I believe we
Okay.
have one of them in house. So if you want to see anything that
Okay.
I've produced there, you can definitely come by and check them out too.
Awesome. That's great. Well, thank you again for
Thank you.
joining, and I'm going to pop you backstage, and
All
I'll
right.
see you after the show.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me on.
Thanks. Well, that was awesome. Great chatting with Lily. Learned a lot about some other species today, and it'll be really neat to see the different projects that she's going to work on. My husband's still listening. I see you texting me. You probably get better response if you put it in the comments in the chat. But no, we are out of foil if that's what you're looking for. So definitely anyone, my Canadian friends, I hope you have a great Thanksgiving weekend. Enjoy your long weekend. We will be I won't be on. We were supposed to have a show next week scheduled, but it's going to be rescheduled because last minute, as you heard earlier, if you missed it at the beginning, Gerald and I are going to be vending at the Reptile Expo on Sunday. So it's a little hard to do a live podcast from the expo. It's a little noisy too, and I think you probably appreciate the quiet of me doing it in this room as opposed to doing it at a table with a bunch of people where you can't hear me. So we'll have a break next Sunday, but then we will be coming back the following Sunday, and we'll be right back to our podcasts. I believe it's Gecko Nerd actually that we have for that Sunday, so that'll be fun. Some really interesting genetic talks. Again, we have a couple closing comments here. Let's see if there's any gecko cases. Oh, okay, so that's back on that banana. I'm not sure. Would have to do a little bit more research. And Tammy says, thanks, ladies. Love the episode. Have a great weekend with family and friends. Same to you. So again, have a great weekend. Same to my US friends too, and anyone who's watching this after the fact. And I will see you in 2 weeks, unless you see me in person next Sunday at the expo. That's it for today. So have a great weekend. See ya.
Shake your dreams from your hair. I'm already there, right beside you.